Hi everyone! In this video, we will install the current version as of summer 2024 of MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench on my Windows desktop computer. So here you can see my system configuration. You see that I have an older i7 computer with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 64-bit operating system that is Windows 10 Enterprise. Let's go and install. All right, so here we are on the current version of the mysql.com website, and I'm going to Downloads. Under Downloads, I'm going to scroll past all of the commercial editions, which are paid editions, to the MySQL Community Downloads, and here I'm going to the MySQL Community Server. For MySQL Community Server, I'm going to select 840 LTS, and I'm going to use the Windows MSI installer. I'm going to download this. I'm also going to click past any of the logins to no thanks, just start my download. And here's my download that's coming. So now I'm going to launch the installer. And I'm going to hit next, and I accept the license agreement. Next, and then here as a setup type, I will check complete with everything that I want to install. And then I'm going to install MySQL Server 8.4. This is the MySQL Server 8.4 setup wizard that I have downloaded, and I'm going to hit next. Then I'm going to accept the terms of the license agreement, and I'm going to hit next again. And then I'm going to select complete for my installation scope because I want basically what amounts to the developer version. I'm going to hit install. And now the setup wizard will install MySQL Server 8.4. There is a good chance that I may have to approve that as the administrator of this computer. After approving the installation as the administrator of this computer, all the files have been installed, and now we're getting ready to configure the server. This is the MySQL configurator, and in order to run this, I need to approve this again as the administrator of my computer. And now we start configuring the MySQL server through the installation interface, also called the MySQL Server Configurator. I'm going to hit next here. This is where my files are going to install. Then this is my configuration type as a development computer. That's because I'm going to want to develop a database on this computer. I'm going to leave everything else with its default settings here. Note that the port here is 3306. Typically in real life, you would change that for security reasons. And then I can put in a root password. My password is going to be this. Okay, then I have the option of adding user accounts. In real life, you would add users with varying permissions profiles. This is so that not everybody is a root user that has complete access to everything, including all user creation, all file installation, all upgrades and everything, but that everybody gets only the permissions that they need in order to do their job. So you have the option here of setting up a username, for example, sysadmin, and then determine on what host the sysadmin has permissions. Here's the local host, and then the role can be a database administrator, backup administrator, and all the permissions profiles are described right here. And then the authentication here will be MySQL, and then I'm going to just make this user here, and I can enter the password that's just for this user, and there you go. So now I have not just a root user, but I also have a system administration user. So then I have the option of configuring MySQL Server as a Windows service. This means that it will be managed by the Windows operating system, including the startup sequence and the shutdown sequence. So I'm going to leave it like this, and then grant full access to the user running the Windows service. Now, again, this is a school installation for your university work. This is not an official business installation, at which point you will want to let your system administrator manage the permissions after the server configuration, or directly configure the level of access to the database. So then I'm going to immediately install two sample databases, the Sakila and the World database, and then I'm going to allow it to configure all of these steps here by hitting execute. And now my database is configuring. I'm going to pause this video to make sure that we're not spending time seeing my computer cycle. And the configuration is done, at which point I'm going to hit next. And I have the option of copying the log, the installation log, to my clipboard in order to review it in, say, something like Notepad. I'm going to do this real quick to see if there are any irregularities. Here we go. This is the installation log. All right, we're seeing here the beginning configuration step, initializing database, etc. And these are all the configuration steps that we saw on the previous screen, basically. All right, good. Nothing looks out of the ordinary, and I'm going to hit finish. And now MySQL Server is installed and should be up and running. How can I tell that MySQL Server is installed and up and running? I'm going to go to my menu here, and we're seeing I have a new MySQL folder. And in my new MySQL folder, I have my command line client and the configurator, which we just used. So I'm going to launch my command line client, and then I'm going to enter my password, and here we go. I am at the MySQL prompt, and then I can type show databases to see which databases are installed. And in fact, we installed Sakila, we installed World, and then there are some default databases that you're seeing here as well. They're also called schemas. So this is called the information schema, the MySQL schema, the performance schema, and sys, about which we will learn later. This completes the basic nuts and bolts installation. There's also an option for separately installing a graphic user interface called MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench does essentially the same thing as the command line client, which you've just seen, but it does it as a drag and drop interface and point and click and all of those things. So it may be a little bit more convenient to work with. However, it is not always installed on any systems that you will encounter in real life. This is why it is a separate add-on that you have to install separately. You can find MySQL Workbench at dev.mysql.com/downloads, and then we click on MySQL Workbench, and we're going to install 8036 here with the MSI installer. And that downloads the file, which we can then launch. And through the setup wizard, we can install the, I'm going to use complete MySQL Workbench. And here we go. After authenticating with my administrative account for my computer, you can see the installer running here. There's nothing new. It's basically very much a similar process as to installing the files for the community server. And here we go. And hit finish. And now we can start connecting the Workbench to our MySQL server. There you go. Here is the MySQL Workbench. This is the interface. it will connect to the local instance of our MySQL server with the root account and through the localhost port 3306, which is the default port. Remember that in an actual professional installation, this localhost will be reconfigured to a different number simply since 3306 is. All right, and then we're going to continue anyway here. All right, and here is the MySQL Workbench. We're seeing in our database, we have Sakila, and we have world, and we have sys, and that is basically the same thing as we have here. We have Sakila, we have world, and we have sys, and we're already seeing that in MySQL Workbench, we're not seeing all of the information that we're seeing through the command line client. That is because the command line client is simply more powerful and it requires more system administrator knowledge than the MySQL Workbench. And this is the entirety of our installation for this course.